Hello, hello. So we will start exactly at 3 p.m. Hello. 4 p.m. we will start. Sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we will start exactly at 3 p.m. Hello. 4 p.m. we will start. Sir. So we will start exactly at 3 p.m. Hello. 4 p.m. we will start.
Sir, sound is not clear.
Is it now okay? We will start at 4 p.m.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Another 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, yes, 3 minutes are there still.
Okay. Let us start, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, firstly, I welcome you for the informative session on the prototype validation and converting prototype into startup for our students of BVVS Polytechnic of Karnataka State. Firstly, I welcome on the behalf of our principal and IIC coordinator, sir. Sir, welcome you, sir. And it is my pleasure to introduce the, the speaker of the today's session on prototype validation and converting prototype into startup, Dr. Bhaskar Gupta. Sir, Dr. Bhaskar Gupta is the president of the IIC cell and IIMT College Polytechnic, Noida. As Dr. Bhaskar Gupta is a basically academician, research scientist, and director and dean at IIMT Group of Colleges, Greater Noida since 2020. Sir has completed his engineering degree in the year of 2001 and completed MTech with honor in the year of 2006 in the electronics and communication subject. As he has worked as a coordinator, now working as a coordinator for the NISP and ARIA. He published the published and presented various papers in national and international level journals, and he has guided the number of MTech projects. He is a fellow membership in the IEEE, MTT, IEI, IETE, and IIRS Dehradun. And with this brief, thank you very much, sir, for being with us. I humbly request you, sir, please take over the session and make the session successful. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir, for such a nice introduction. Good afternoon to one and all present here for this wonderful session on prototype validation and converting prototype into startup, which is one of the Q4 activities of Institutions Innovation Council 4.0. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the IAC President of BVVS Polytechnic, Principal of the Polytechnic, IAC Vice President, Convener, and other council members of the IAC cell. I am very glad to take this session on prototype validation, which is a part of any startup cycle for students and faculty members, and hope the session would be both enriching and informative for you all, and you will be trying to become a successful entrepreneur, which is the demand of the modern era, which is the mandate from the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, and our honorable Prime Minister has been trying very harder in order to develop that kind of ecosystem across the country in order to promote the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. Let me begin with my presentation quickly. So I am going to present. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir. Visible.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to this session on prototype validation and how can we convert developed prototype into a startup. What is prototyping? It is very, very important to understand because this is the second last stage of any startup cycle or any startup journey. Prototype validation comes in when you have determined what user problem you have to solve, but you haven't yet figured out how to solve it. It's a later stage of concept testing that allows you to evaluate how someone feels about a new product before you are going to release it in the market for commercialization. Creating a product is usually a very complex process. However, there is no point of starting in the design and development works without validating your idea. It's the very first step for every new product idea. Without proper validation, you risk wasting time, materials, and money on a product that doesn't stand a chance on the market. Building a prototype is one of the best ways to validate your product idea and the first step to creating a product that users will love. So, how can you create a prototype to validate your idea? What are different kinds of prototypes around us? Let's have a look at this. Before we dive into specific methods of how you can make a prototype and test it, let's first establish what prototyping actually is. Prototypes are used to capture concepts and ideas into a tangible forms that can be tested. They are like sketches of the final product. Prototypes representing all the functionalities of the product without any of the additional visuals like branding, pictures, illustrations, etc. Prototypes can be of various different fidelity levels, from a simple sketch on paper to a highly functional digital prototype made using InVision or Figma softwares. Depending on the project stage and specific testing needs, you can use different levels of fidelity. For example, if you are just getting started with a new and novel idea, there is no need to make a high fidelity interactive prototype. Instead, you can make a low cost paper one to test on few users and get their initial feedback. Generally speaking, the further along the design process you are, the higher fidelity should the prototypes be. Why should I bother prototyping? From our experience, most companies don't really grasp why prototyping is so beneficial. For many, it seems like a waste of time. However, it truly is the fastest and cheapest way to test your product. So, what are some key benefits of this kind of prototyping? Number one, you can minimize risk. First of all, prototyping early on will help you minimize risks. The sooner you build a prototype, the sooner you will find errors, you will find mistakes. Prototyping is also the best way to get a better understanding of what the users are looking for and how they perceive your product idea. Without such research, you risk building a product that will not hold its own on the market. Testing ideas. Prototypes are a great way of quickly testing feature ideas. If you create even a simple paper prototype, you will be able to quickly test new concepts and get almost instant feedback from your team and target users. Prototypes are helpful tools at every stage of the design process. Provide a sense of ownership. A prototype can create a sense of ownership within all the stakeholders in the company, making it easier for them to engage with the project. If you sense that someone on the team is not that invested, presenting them with a prototype will be a good step towards creating an emotional bond with the product. Better pitch. What I mean to say about your business pitch. When pitching your idea to someone within your company or to outside investors, angel investors, venture capitalists, successful entrepreneurs, it's good to have a prototype at hand. People who you are going to pitch your business idea to will get to see and experience the product before they make a decision which may greatly influence whether they decide to back you. After all, it's better to make decisions about something you can actually see and use than to decide on a completely imaginary product. So you have to be very, very careful about the very short and brief business pitch which you are going to present in front of angel investors for getting working capital for any kind of financial help from the outside world. Getting surprising insights. So nobody is going to inform you, dear students, what are the main errors, what are the problems with your products or services or the process, but you would have to discover those insights. Some insights are impossible to come by without prototypes. What do I mean? Well, when testing your prototype with the target users, you may come across insights you would not otherwise have found. That's right. Things like accessibility issues or unexpected edge cases, getting those insights during prototyping ahead of time and preparing for them before you launch the product will definitely help you avoid costly mistakes and help make your product more user friendly. Building prototypes to create better products. As you can see, there is a lot of benefits to prototyping, but perhaps the biggest one is this. Prototyping enables you and your team to build better products. And better products mean more satisfied users who will be buying your product, and that leads to growth and increased revenue for the company. So basically, what every company wants, think of it this way. Investing in prototypes early on is much cheaper than paying to solve issues later when the product has been launched. You will avoid a ton of unnecessary work by spending a bit more time on testing your ideas. Now that you are convinced that building prototype is the way to go, let's get into how to create and test good prototypes. First steps with prototyping. Before you dive into drawing actual prototypes, you should do some basic research on your business idea in general. Get an overview of the market, competitors around you, and the user's needs. This way, you will be able to direct your ideas into specific segments of the market and create a better prototype. Here is some questions you need to ask yourself and your team before you move on with the process. What is that? What problem will the product solve? First, ask yourself how your product will help the users. Without identifying how you will be able to help the target audience, you can't move on to designing the solution. You cannot find some appropriate and innovative solution unless you have identified the right problem. There must be technical feasibility, commercial viability. Everything has to be checked before developing any kind of product prototype. If you are going to do of thing later stage of any startup cycle, then definitely your prototype will not work out. And at that stage, you want to be able to convert your prototype into startup. A startup is a small kind of business owned by budding entrepreneurs. Think about possible use cases. You might want to try creating a problem statement to get a general overview of the purpose of your product. What similar products are already available? You have to undergo a very, very detailed survey about the market segment, on what product you are going to work out, whether any other product is available in the market or not, with same kinds of features. So based on your prototype, you are going to validate your proof of concept, your basic problem statement, and going to gather the feedback of the end users, going to perform the number of iterations and going to iterate until you get the right product in your hands for the actual commercialization into the market, and going to make those necessary modifications also based on the user's needs and wants. So try to find some competitive products that people are using now, such not only within the same industry as your business, but also across other industries. You might find something that solves the same problem, but regarding a different target group. Who is the target user? What are their goals? The next thing you need to get to know is who are your target users? What do they really want and need? What are they looking for from your product? How will it integrate into their daily lives? How will they be using it? Don't get tangled with your own expectations. Try to really think outside the box and place yourself inside the user-like mindset. So please give respect to your customers, give respect to the end users. This is a very important stage of any design thinking process where you have to empathize with your customers, you have to understand their problems, you have to talk to them, what are your exact problems, and based on that, you have to generate the problem statement. And after the innovative identity problem statement, and just after that, you will be going for the prototyping for your validation, and then you can convert your prototype into the business venture or startup. What type of product is it? With the target user and their goals in mind, think about what type of product you should make. Depending on the target audience, they may need it to work on different devices and platforms. For example, some age groups are more likely to use mobile devices, while others prefer using web devices. So you have to be very careful about the age group also. What I mean to say at this point of time, dear startup founders, you have to be careful about the demographic and sociographic data of the customers. You need to know what you are actually making before starting to work on your very first prototype. What are the goals for the prototyping process? The last thing to set before getting to work on your prototypes is the goals, objectives, vision, mission. Before you actually create the prototype, you need to have an idea of what you want them to achieve. Depending on your specific goals, you may want to create a higher or lower fidelity prototype. This will also determine whether you need to build a digital prototype or whether a simple paper one will be enough. So you have to decide based on the needs whether you are going to develop low high. If your idea is highly innovative, in that case I would suggest you need not to go for a physical prototype. You can even have a sketch on the paper. You can make paper prototype in order to validate your idea, and that will work. Drawing your very first prototype after you have gathered all the information and have an idea of what the product might look like, it's the right time to get started with drawing your prototype. Start with gathering your materials, whether it will be a pen and paper or a marker and a whiteboard, and start sketching. If it's your first time designing a prototype, you might want to use a free template of the device you are designing for. So there are a number of templates available. There is a plenty of free device designs available online that can be downloaded and you can draw. It will make it easier for you to create something that's suited perfectly for a certain device. Sketch user flows. It's important that your sketch will show the user flow of the product. make sure to mark what happens when the user does a certain action. Basically, what happens when they click a button or a section. After you create a few screens, you will get a better idea of what's the overall shape of the product, and it will become easier to create a user flow. Give yourself time. So this is the most important part. Although we tend to use prototypes for rapid testing, you don't have to rush the process if it is your first time drawing a prototype. When working with materials like pen and paper, you have the advantage of being able to experiment and try out various different concepts. Don't get stressed out when your prototype doesn't look good or looks messy. The point of a prototype is to explore different ideas and designs for free without the need to build an actual app. Handmade designs are different from digital ones. So you can have any kind of prototype. I hope till now you must have understood it could be a physical prototype, it could be a digital prototype, and then you have to decide whether it is going to be a paper type prototype, physical prototype, or high fidelity or low fidelity based on the need. So what are handmade designs and how are they different from digital ones? When working on a paper prototype, you will get a better idea of where content like pictures and illustrations fit into the design. However, you need to keep in mind that the size of your writing and drawings is not representative of digital designs, and therefore, when you decide to move on to a higher fidelity prototype, it may look slightly different and you may have to change the length of your content, etc. What are high fidelity prototypes? After you have created paper prototypes you are happy with, you can try to create high fidelity prototypes now once you have created paper prototypes, sketches. However, there is not always a need for high fidelity prototypes. Sometimes a sketch will be enough to use it during testing phase. Depending on your goals, you may be able to move on without a more complex digital prototype. What's also important to know is that higher fidelity prototypes are not that easy to make and are less cost effective than paper ones. So we should try to avoid high fidelity prototypes because it is a costly affair. But if your idea is not creative, not innovative, in that case, I would suggest students you have to develop high fidelity prototypes of your product for the validation purpose. And in that case, only you can think of converting your prototype, which is used for validation, into startup or into business venture or into enterprise. Making digital prototypes is not that easy and usually requires using online prototyping softwares like Adobe XD, Figma, or InVision, which are not that simple to get started with and to come at a cost. So you can make use of these softwares also. Adobe XD is there, Figma, InVision for your digital prototyping. However, if your objective is to use a digital high fidelity prototype, here's what to focus on when creating one. What is the fidelity of a prototype? It is important to understand. We keep talking about low and high fidelity prototypes, but what does that actually mean? The fidelity of a prototype is determined by the complexity of it, meaning the level of interactivity, visual designs, and the content. Depending on what you want to achieve with the prototype, you can opt for different levels of fidelity in your prototype design. However, you should keep in mind that the higher fidelity the prototype, the more it is going to cost to make it and the longer it will take. So what is the conclusion at this point of time? Try to avoid making these high fidelity prototypes. In fact, what I would say, you can work with low fidelity prototypes also, and try to work harder in the initial stages of any startup cycle when you are undergoing a design thinking process, when you are going to find out the statement, we're going to develop a solution for that problem. At that point of time, you can have the concept of prototypes. There is not just prototype, prototypes are also there, which have to be developed in the beginning only of any business cycle. If anything wrong happens at that point of time, so that's the right time, and by that time you would not have invested too much of money in your business, and there only you can correct the errors, you can make certain modifications in your prototype, and you can certainly validate your idea, whether it is innovative, having technical feasibility, commercial viability is there or not. So sometimes I would like to share, in the past decades, number of startups were registered in India, and most of the startups failed. Why? Because of the reasons they didn't work out for the customers. That was one of the main reasons. Just like 3D television concept came in India a couple of years back, and the product market fit concept was missing, during the development of that 3D television, and no more customer was there in the market, and that startup failed. So what startup requires? A lot of innovation, like incremental innovation, disruptive kind of innovation, radical innovation, sustaining kind of innovation. So there are so many unicorn startups now. In fact, in India till now, 94 unicorn startups are existing in India, which includes Uber, Ola, Misho, and their Airbnb. Number of unicorn startups are there. In fact, we are expecting to increase this number to from 100 to 200 by 2023. So any startup can lead with innovation only. If innovativeness is missing, if you are not doing anything innovatively, then definitely your idea will die. So here, what is the fidelity I was talking about? Depending on what you want to achieve with the prototype, you can opt for different levels of fidelity in your prototype design, depending on the need. However, you should keep in mind that higher fidelity is there, prototype is there, it is going to cost more and longer it will take. How are you going to test your now ready? You can start testing it. How to do that? Well, the method of testing your prototype will depend on what you look to achieve. For rapid testing, you might want to see if anyone in your environment matches the target audience and could take part into testing. So please do remember to include your target audience to whom you are going to sell the product, take their feedback, and based on that, you can test your prototype. If you want to get quantitative feedback, you might email the prototype you made with a questionnaire to people who fit into your target audience. However, if you want to get more specific qualitative feedback, you might want to consider conducting some IDIs or in-depth interviews with the target audience. These interviews are one-to-one, one-on-one meetings when you sit down with the user, asking them to use your prototype, performing specific tasks, and sharing their thoughts. Using interviews is a very effective method of gathering quality insights, but it does take more time to do and will not be a free testing method. Most participants won't be willing to give away their time for free. So you might want to be prepared to pay small rewards to each participant. Additionally, conducting ITIs is not an easy task, so you might want to consider consider hiring a designer for your company or a UX design company to help you out. Use testing tools to make your work easier. If you don't want to work with the designers or an agency, you can start by conducting smaller tests yourself using the available tools. There is a plenty of software available to analyze your design. For example, using the Hotjar app is there, you can distinguish between problem arenas within your design that make users confused or test whether your design keeps their attention for certain amounts of time. Another great way to test the prototype design you made would be creating a landing page that is going to present a few screens of the product and launching a mini ad campaign to see how many people are interested in an idea. You can also ask those people to leave their email addresses and then later use it to send them additional questions or ask for their feedback or insights. Keep your objectives in mind. Remember, when we are talking about objectives and goals, well, it's very important to keep them in mind when testing your prototype design. Don't do methods simply because they are quick or free. Think about the results they will provide and how those insights will benefit your product. Start small and don't waste time and money on extensive testing. After you start your testing, gathering the insights and improving your prototype design along the process. This will ensure by the end of testing, you will have the most viable product likely to succeed on the market, and at that point of view, you would be able to convert your prototype into the startup. You can sometimes take expert help also if you feel so. If you feel like you need expert help to validate your product idea, then you can approach experts also for their kind help. How to build a prototype for a startup idea. Startup founders that have identified a real problem and created a solution have a startup idea. They have a certain vision for disputing industries, making life better, easier, quicker, or different by making that idea into a business. Then startup idea often has a digital or technical element that needs creation. This can be a web app or a platform or software solution. The challenge is figuring out how to build this software solution, especially if the startup founder has a little or no technical expertise. So that's a great challenge. Founders can start by learning the technical language, just like building a house where you would need to understand the terminology of what foundations are, what an architect is, who does what in the build process. Founders need to understand the basics of technical lingo. And founders have to consider what they want to build. At the early stage of the startup, the founder can look to build a prototype. First step is to draw out the customer flow of the product and think through the various steps from customers interested in buying the product right through to customers using the product. Second step, once the drawings are complete, is to consider who is going to build the prototype. So this I am going to talk in the context of startups. So you are startup founder, you have to be very careful about these things. Options include outsourcing the development and design to an agency. This agency can be based locally or further at a field. With the increased cost of technical development in United Kingdom and Ireland, more founders are looking to Europe and Asia for outsourced development to keep costs down. The challenges can be the time difference, being able to manage them closely, and occasionally language differences. Another option also there is to consider a no-code route to get the prototype built. This option allows users to create applications through methods like drag and drop, adding in application components to complete the application. There are several tools available that startup founders can use to get started, including Bubble and Airtable. These are complemented by automation tools such as Zapier, Notion, and Typeform to move data from one place to another place. The no-code option takes some time for the founder to learn, however, may save some money in building the prototype. The final step for the prototype is to use it to get customer feedback on the validity of the idea and prove there is a demand before looking to further development into a commercial solution. So you have to be very, very careful about it. Thank you very much. Now you can take up any question from the students. The organizers of the session may also conduct some Q&A session if students are willing to ask questions.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. There is no question, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions from the student side? So you can ask questions if any question is there. So you can open the session for question and answers.
Sir, is there one question, sir? Sir, sir, am I audible, sir? Am I audible? But
Now you are audible, sir.
yes, sir, yes, sir. Sir, for converting the prototype into startup, is there any government facilities are available, sir?
You mean to say, are there any government facilities?
Yeah. For example,
Yes, 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 yes. See, nowadays government is taking initiative in order to promote this kind of innovation, entrepreneurial activities. So, as I already told you, if you are ready with your innovative prototype and you have tested it with your end users, you can approach. You have to register your business with some attorney in terms of LLP company or a private limited company. Once you get the SIN number, corporate identification number, once your startup is registered with the government, then that is called MSME Udyam number, MSME Udyam registration. After that only you can access the various government schemes like Nidhi Priyas scheme is there under Department of Science and Technology, DST. There is another Startup India where you can register. Number of incubators, MSME incubators are there. Atal incubation centers are present. Accelerators are there once your startup is established. So where you can look for some mentoring support, financial support. In fact, co-working space is also being provided by incubators, where incubators will incubate your idea. And not just this, they have a social networking. If your prototype is really innovative, they will be presenting your prototype in front of outside investors who might take interest in your product and will provide you financial assistance. So at this point of time, I would like to clarify that there are more than 300 incubators available in India with the government support, and more than 500 private angel investors are there who can support your business.
Sir, please unmute, sir.
So we are also having an incubator in my own college where more than 25 startups are being incubated. So there are a number of government agencies like MSME, Atal Incubation Center, Department of Science and Technology, Nidhi Priyas scheme, Startup India, MSME-based incubators, accelerators, where you can find some mentoring support, co-working space, financial assistance for first 2 years. They are not going to charge anything. You can, but you would have to search the nearby accelerator or incubator in your area. In my area, we have Atal Incubation Center. We have a number of other accelerators also. In my own college, we have incubator. So from where you can get a list of angel investors or successful entrepreneurs or venture capitalists who can help you out. If I find your product innovative, then I will be ready to pay working capital for your startup. Okay, you take this seed money, that is called seed money from me, and you can start. But please do remember, you should have a better business pitch, better prototype, innovative prototype, which you are going to present in front of outside investors. Otherwise, they will not take any interest in your business. So there are more than 500, government supported incubators, accelerators, STAP science and technology parks across the country. You have to identify and you can approach incubators from there. You can have financial assistance, or you can also get grant in aid from the DST, MSME, or this Niti Aayog, Atal Incubation Centers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, I request our Arif Patte, sir, who is the convener of this ISL, will present the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon, my dear student friends. I am very much pleased to express vote of thanks on behalf of ISL BVVS Polytechnic Bagalkot, and I would like to express my vote of thanks on behalf of President of IIC, Sri Matru sir, and organizer startup cell coordinator Sri RM Kulkarni sir, and another my colleague Mr. MM Nayak is here, and who is a coordinator for legal cell. I would like to express my vote of thanks to Sri Gupta sir for delivering a wonderful session on prototype validation and converting a prototype into startup, who covered the validation process and the converting the prototype into startup. I hope the session will be helpful to our students, and in the future we hope to have such a conversations, such a sessions with you, sir. Thank you very much for delivering such a wonderful session. Thank you very much from on behalf of students also, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to express my views for today's fantastic session on prototype validation. At the last, I would like to thank the President of IICSL, students and faculty fraternity for being patient throughout the session, Principal of the college, Convener, Vice President and Council members, and thanks to the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell for the promotion of these activities. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.